Welcome. We're so glad that you are joining us this evening to hear more about Do Canines' future. I'm Karen Hansen, the Marketing and Communication Manager here, and I will be presenting the questions to Jeff as we go throughout the evening. I do want to thank so many of you who submitted questions ahead of time. That's very helpful to us. And at this time, we will turn things over to our Executive Director, Jeff Johnson.
Thank you, Karen. And I want to thank Justine too for being with us tonight. And also I want to thank Peter and Sheila, who are both in the house tonight, to make sure that this goes off, hopefully without a hitch. We'll see, but thank you for your time. And I want to thank all of you for watching tonight, for submitting questions, whether you have already or you're going to, and just for being supporters and interested in this organization. I am closing in on my 1-year anniversary in a couple months. And I can tell you that I continue to feel very blessed to be here. This is an extraordinary organization. Can we be better at what we do? Of course we can, including me, but it's a truly extraordinary organization. And we're at a very exciting time right now. Many of you know, because I sent something out, I'm sure, to all of you a few months ago about the strategic plan that we've been working on for many months, and the board passed it a few months ago. And since then, we put together a work plan for the entire organization, kind of an overarching work plan that tracks that strategic plan. And then each department is tasked now within the next month or so to create their own more granular work plan. And so we're actually going to use this strategic plan to build into the future. It's not going to go on a shelf. It will drive us for the next 3 years. And I think there's a lot of excitement right now about the work plan. At least I'm excited about it. That's what I'm hearing from others, both within and outside the organization. And it's just, I think it's a time for a lot of optimism and a lot of excitement about what the future holds for us. And I would just like to share a few of the highlights of that strategic plan / work plan, and then we'll jump into questions. For those of you who saw the outline of the strategic plan a few months ago, you will recall that it really has 3 big picture goals. So goal number 1 is to do better what we're already doing, better serve and engage our clients and our volunteers and our staff and our donors. Goal number 2 is to raise our profile and hopefully cast a wider net into new communities and just make sure that everybody in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin knows who we are. And number 3, very simply, the third goal is to serve more people with disabilities, whether it's in the traditional way that we always have, or maybe some new ways that we are willing to try and see if they work. And as we put together this work plan, we started kind of adding some meat to the bones of that strategic plan. So under goal number 1, that talks about how we can better serve and engage our clients and our staff and our volunteers and other supporters, there are a few kind of key items that stand out to me. One is we want to create a volunteer advisory committee and a client advisory committee. The devil's in the details and all this sort of stuff, but we want a group that over time will rotate and have different people that we can rely on to be a liaison to the volunteer and the client world, and also could be a sounding board for us as we may have this great idea about what volunteers will love. It'd be nice to have a group of volunteers to ask that of and say, are we right or are we wrong? We hope to create a full-time position at some point next year, pending budget, of a graduate services coordinator. So right now we have 4 client service coordinators, or we have 4 positions. One of them is open right now, but we'll fill that soon. And we have a lot of graduates. They serve graduates through the life of that team. So they spend most of their time training the client, the new client, and the dog, but they're also there for the graduates after graduation for many years. But we've heard from a lot of graduates that they know they can call with their questions or their issues, but oftentimes they feel guilty because they know how busy our client services coordinators are, and they are. And so they choose not to. We want to create a position that is dedicated solely to serving our graduates. This person will not do any training of new clients. That will be left to the other 4. And their job will be to get to know the graduates and to be there to help the graduates, maybe do a little advocacy for them and a little education for the community. There are many other areas. One is we're trying to figure out new and creative ways to make sure our volunteers can follow the dogs that they help train better. I know I've been told we're doing a better job of that the last couple of years before I came than we were before. But we can do even better. And so we're trying to be creative on that. That's one area where maybe a volunteer advisory committee could help us. With respect to raising our profile, pretty straightforward. We're going to start spending some money on advertising. That's something that we really haven't done in the past. We've been a word of mouth organization that's been very successful for Can Do Canines. But if we want to grow in a significant way, if we want more donors and we want more volunteers and we want more applicants for our positions and more clients, we need to raise the profile. And so we're going to start spending some money on that. And in so doing, our intent is to also cast a much broader net so that we are doing a better job of reaching communities that we haven't been great at reaching before. Communities of color in particular, not because anybody didn't want to, but simply because our networks have all looked kind of similar. And we want to make sure that every community knows about us and that every person in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin has the information they need to be able to become a client of ours, or to become a volunteer of ours, or to apply for a job with us. So we're pretty excited about that. And then the last piece is to serve more people with disabilities. And as I mentioned, some of that will come through just growing and maybe an incremental way, have more teams than we did the year prior. We were at 51 last year. We'll probably be similar to that, although we'll talk about maybe even a little less because of a client issue we have. But we also want to look at other ways where we could possibly serve people with disabilities. One of those ways is to look at our career change dogs. We career change on average, and it's going to vary from year to year, but on average, it's right around 30% of our dogs are career changed. Some because they don't want to be an assistance dog and we only want to have them do what they love doing. Some because of health issues, sometimes not serious health issues, but health issues. And others because they're not good in public. They may be able to do wonderful work for a client in their home, but they aren't comfortable with other dogs, or they're afraid to ride in a car. We had one of those the other day. And so we want to look at creating something called a skilled home companion, where it wouldn't be a full-fledged assistance dog, but rather than career change the dog and turn it into an awesome pet, let's let it help a person with disability who's maybe already on our waiting list and would not otherwise get a dog in a different way than what we're used to. Last point on this one, we also are creating a working group that's going to have a pretty broad array of stakeholders to talk about big picture, longer term. What do we look like? So not the next 2 to 3 years, but the next 5 to 10 years. And in particular, look at our property, our campus. Do we want to build on this campus? If so, what does that look like? And, if we want to grow in some significant way, what will that require with respect to our business model? So with that, Karen, I think I will stop talking and open it up for any questions you have.
Great. We'll get started with the first one here. And you already mentioned the term skilled home companions, and that's where we're going to start off, because in the strategic plan, item 3.2 states pilot new services to meet the underserved needs of people with disabilities, for example, skilled home companions or seizure alert dogs. So can you explain what is a skilled home companion? How does that differ from the existing group of service animals that are trained by Can Do Canines?
Great question. I will expand a bit on what I already talked about. A skilled home companion is very similar to an assistance dog, except the work that it does is going to be limited to probably a person's own property or maybe a public space like a park. But they're not going to be going with that person into Target or into the grocery store or to church, and won't have what we call the CAPE rights that a full-blown assistance dog would have under the ADA. As I mentioned, we have some dogs who want to work. They're wonderful dogs. They would be a great assistance dog, but they're not great in public. We had a dog not that long ago that was terrified of riding in the car and would go to the bathroom every time it got in the car. That's not going to work for an assistance dog because they travel everywhere with their client. But if we have a client who doesn't need the dog to go everywhere with them and just needs them to provide a skill at home, provide a task at home, on their own property, that might be a wonderful solution for them. And we might not be able to serve that person otherwise because, for example, if they're an autism family, that waiting list is really long. We have other dogs that really want to work but don't like other dogs. That's not going to work with a full-fledged assistance dog. So a skilled home companion is still a dog that has been taught a special skill or set of skills or tasks to help a person with a disability, but they won't do it in public. So that's really the difference. And it's actually really exciting. And I hear a lot of excitement around here about it. It's a way for us, without really increasing anything we do, to serve more people that need help.
All right, great. What is the plan, both short-term and long-term, to address the fact that we have such a short waiting list and dogs in for final training that aren't being placed in that normal timeframe?
Okay, so I haven't really talked about this yet, but obviously some people recognize that with respect to some of our waiting lists, we are literally short on clients, and they probably know that because we've been saying it to people, help us recruit new clients. Keep in mind that we have 5 separate waiting lists for our 5 different disabilities. They're not all short or empty. Autism continues to be unacceptably long, honestly, probably 3 to 4 years in many cases. And we need to work on ways to shorten that list. But mobility clients, for example, there's almost no one on that list right now. And we have some dogs that are coming up or are almost ready to go, and we don't have a client to match them with. I don't think it's a long-term problem because we believe it's based mostly on, almost entirely on COVID. And we say that because we're hearing that from almost every other assistance dog organization in the country. I was on a Zoom call today with other executive directors, CEOs of assistance dog organizations under Assistance Dogs International. And many of them shared the same problem, that because of COVID, they have many clients who are interested, but they're not at a point right now where they're comfortable. They want to wait until we are further past COVID, whenever that might be, whether it's a few months from now or a year from now, nobody really knows. And because of that, at least for certain sorts of dogs, they are low or lacking in clients. We've also had an effect from COVID in that we haven't been able for many months, we weren't able to get the word out the way we traditionally would have, which was to go give presentations to groups and go have tables at different events. They obviously didn't exist at all for many months. And now they're back to a smaller extent, but they're still not to the extent that we're used to. So I think as time passes with COVID and as we do what we're already doing and intend to do even more of, which is raise our profile, I think the problem of a lack of clients is going to solve itself. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if next year at this time, we're talking about the exact opposite problem. If we do get through COVID, we will probably have a big push of clients who have been waiting, and we might have waiting lists across the board. So it's not I don't think it's a long-term problem. It is a short-term problem for us though, because right now we do have some dogs who are either ready to go or almost ready to go, and we don't have the right client to match them with at the moment. So it means that our team numbers might be a little down this year, but it also wreaks havoc on our business model. So we've got a dog that's ready to go in final training, but that dog doesn't have a client. We're not going to keep that dog in the kennel. We'll send them back to a volunteer home until we find a client for that dog. But that means that volunteer home no longer has a spot for a new dog to puppy raise. And so it has caused us some issues. The short-term plan is what we're already doing to continue that, which is raise the profile, be very direct in this message of we are looking for clients. If you know of somebody who might be able to benefit from one of our service dogs, please have them take a look at our site and apply. The worst that happens is we talk to them and decide it's not a fit, but for many of them, it will be a fit. And we're going to continue to very aggressively get out there for any in-person events that we can. Many of us have been going to in-person events the last several months and tabling and using social media. Karen has done a great job of getting us some wonderful media coverage, both in newspapers, on the radio, and on TV. And because of that, we've seen a little uptick the last few weeks. We're not in the same place that we were 2 months ago with this. It's looking better, but we still need more. So I'm sorry, that was a long answer to maybe a shorter question, but I would ask for your help, those of you who are watching or listening tonight. If you know of somebody who might benefit from one of our dogs, please encourage them to apply. There will not be a better time to apply, especially for a mobility dog. And again, a year from now, we might have waiting lists across the board. We hear from a lot of potential clients that they didn't apply because they didn't feel they were quote unquote disabled enough, or there has to be somebody who needs this dog more than I need it. I tell them that might not be the case. You don't have to be in a wheelchair to need a mobility dog. So tell them to take a look at our website and apply, and we'll have a talk with them and decide whether it's the right fit or not.
All right, so considering the current lack of demand, someone else wants to know then, why do we continue to breed so many puppies?
Well, we breed, this is my understanding, I'm still the new guy here, but my understanding is this is a continual issue where people have disagreements, but we have to keep in mind that we don't breed for today. We breed for 2 to 2.5 years down the road. Because what we breed for today, they're not going to be ready to be an assistance dog probably for close to 2.5 years. And so if we breed based on what the demand is today, it won't work. And certainly if we breed for what the demand is today, we are going to be short, because I have no doubt that demand is going to increase over time, especially as we raise our profile and move out of COVID. Now, deciding what the need is going to be in 2.5 years is a bit of a guessing game as well, because we don't know that for sure. We can certainly have a plan that we'd like to go from 51 to 55 to 60 or something like that, whatever the numbers are. It doesn't mean that that will be the number. And you can just look at this year and COVID as an example of things happen that are outside of your control. And right now we have a few too many dogs. But again, we're going to try to determine where we think we'll be in 2 to 2.5 years. And that's what breeding will be based upon. I have been told that people are very emotional about this, and they have very strong feelings. And sometimes there are differences about breeding. Just know that our staff they're very sensitive to when we breed and how often we breed and how many times we breed. And the health of that mom is always in the front of their mind, even if sometimes there are disagreements about what the right way to go is. We will err on that side. And, whether there are differences or not, just please understand we're not breeding for today. We're breeding for 2.5 years from now.
All right, you mentioned how the different wait lists vary. One person concerned about the autism waiting list in particular wrote, "We applied a few years ago for an autism service dog, but we haven't heard anything since. What is the process, and how can we feel a little certainty that we will be getting a call or email soon? We get so many newsletters and news on the Facebook page with other families getting them. So we would love to know if there's anything else we need to do besides waiting. We do appreciate everything your company does for families."
Yeah, that is the most frustrating piece of what we do for me personally, is that our autism waiting list is so long. And that is why we're going to look at whether there are ways we can help families with autism that might be a little bit different than what we've done before, as well as, try to continue to provide assistance dogs for them. My understanding of how the process works is that this one's unique. We don't do this with our other 4 disabilities because we don't have long waiting lists in those, but we have something called a pre-application process. So when you sign up, you're on the pre-application, you answer a few questions, and we make sure that at that time you're a general fit. But we don't go through the rather significant process of interviews and visits that would happen before a decision is made as to whether you're right for an assistance dog or not. And the reason we do that is because if 3 or 4 years might pass, circumstances could change dramatically. And we don't want to tell a family that, yeah, you have a dog coming, you're the right fit for a dog, but 4 years later, when they're at the top of the list, things have changed so much that they're not anymore. That's a terrible position to put someone in. And of course, the opposite is true too. We don't want to turn someone away because right now they're not the right fit. They might be in 3 or 4 years. So we use a pre-application process. My understanding is that we send an email out every 6 months or so for the people on that pre-application list to ask if they're still interested and they still want to stay on the list. It sounds from this applicant that they're not getting those emails. So that's a problem. It might be a glitch on our end, or it might be, spam or something like that. But we want to take care of that. We want to at least give you basic information and confirm with you that you're still on the list and you're moving up the list. So if you are a person who is in that position, you're the person who asked the question, shoot me an email and I will connect you with the right person. I'm at jjohnson@candocanines.org. I'm sure Carrie can answer the question for you easily. Give me a call or shoot me an email and I will connect you with the right person, because we do want you to know that you're still on the list and you're moving up the list. And I want to make sure there's not a gap there somewhere.
All right, we're going to stay on this waiting list topic just a little longer to get some of these addressed while we're talking about it. But since you have a short waiting list in other ways, would you consider expanding your service area beyond Wisconsin and Minnesota? I know some East Coast folks that need dogs. What's your territory for clients? Is there any chance someone outside your local area could get a dog from you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our current area is all of Minnesota and Western Wisconsin. There's no exact boundary in Wisconsin, but almost all of our clients are in that area. We do have a few clients slightly outside that area, but not many. And most of them are from a time ago when we had a slightly broader area. This was before my time, but a decision was made a while back. I think we were doing the Dakotas and Iowa at one point. A decision was made a while back to limit to where we are right now. I think because our waiting lists were too long in several areas. We talked a lot during strategic planning about how do we, that bucket number 3, how do we serve more people with disabilities? One possible answer to that was expand our territory. There are a lot of organizations that are nationwide, but their model is extremely different from ours. Our model is that you are, as a client, individually trained with a client services coordinator and your dog in person here and then in your home. And so being nationwide, that's very tough to do. And the nationwide organizations do it quite differently. They tend to bring everybody in at the same time to be trained in a big group and stay in a hotel and that sort of thing. For us to expand in a really significant way would require a basic model change. It's not something we're completely opposed to. It's just not something we're going to do right now. There is the kind of that smaller step of, do we expand out a little bit into, again, maybe the Eastern Dakotas and Northern Iowa, maybe over to Milwaukee or something like that. And we did talk about that, and that's still definitely a possibility. But we think first, we want to make sure that, as our strategic plan points out, we want to make sure we are doing what we already do with the clients we already have as well as we can. And there are some things we could do better. And we want to raise our profile within our area to make sure we're serving everybody who's already here, because we do believe the need is here. We just need to make sure everybody who might benefit from us actually knows about us, because many people don't yet.
All right, we're getting a lot of great questions in, so we're trying to keep up on all of them. Thank you, everybody, for doing that. Let's jump to this one, because Jeff, you talked about dogs being used in some ways that we haven't done so in the past, with skilled home companions and so forth. Could career changed dogs also trickle down to be dogs in schools, hospital visits, nursing home visits, mental health situations, etc.?
Yes, and that's another, I didn't even bring it up, but there's another exciting thing we've been talking about as a possibility. They're often called facility dogs, where the dog, lives with someone, but that someone happens to work at a facility like a courthouse, like a children's hospital, like a school, and the dog serves, the purpose not of serving one person with a disability, but being there for, multiple people, oftentimes children or people who are in a vulnerable situation. And we intend to look into that next year. It's in the work plan. We've got a small group of staff who are looking into that, trying to figure out what exactly that would take and what the opportunities would be for us. We're very open to that. And again, it's a way for us to take a career change dog, and rather than say you become the most awesome pet in the world, you can actually work because you want to, and you can change a whole bunch of people's lives. So thank you for asking that question, because it's definitely on the radar for us.
And maybe we can clarify a little more because there was just a question now of being able to explain why the autism wait list is so long and the others don't have enough. Can't some of these dogs just be shifted to autism?
Yeah, they can't. I mean, that is, so the most challenging part of this organization, and frankly, any larger assistance dog organization, is to try to balance all the different moving parts. We call them pillars here. So our clients, our staff, our volunteers, our donors, and our dogs. Those are our 5 pillars, and trying to keep them all in balance so we have the right number of dogs to match the right clients and the right number of volunteers and the right amount of money and staff is really difficult. And it's more difficult than any other type of organization that I've ever known, for a couple of reasons. Number one is our clients have very unpredictable lives because they have disabilities. We rely on volunteers more than any organization I have ever been a part of before. So they are, we're not asking people to stuff envelopes. We're asking them to give up, in some cases, years of their lives and then give a dog back. We rely on staff and donors just like any other organization does, which can be unpredictable. But then the most unpredictable piece is our product is a living being that we don't have control over. It's a dog as opposed to an electric wheelchair or a hearing aid. And we can do our best to breed dogs, because most of our dogs come through our own breeding program, to have the right personality and the right health, but it just doesn't always work because that's life. So anyway, that's setting up the answer to the question. We can't. Autism dogs, and again, I won't pretend to be an expert on this. I'm repeating what I hear from the people who are amazing at their jobs here. But autism dogs are really special dogs. They're all special dogs, but they are probably the most special because they need to be what we call bomb-proof. Oftentimes their basic physical task for a child with autism, a child with a disability, is to be tethered to that child in public so the child can't bolt out into traffic or run away. But every parent I've talked to who has one of our dogs and has an autistic child tells me that is wonderful, but that is not the greatest benefit of the dog. The greatest benefit of the dog is that dog's ability to both calm the child in a way that no human has ever been able to do in almost any instance, and create a bridge to other people, especially other kids where the child may not have had any interest in interacting. Now that dog gives them a bridge to do that, and it has changed their lives. And so we need dogs who can stay extremely calm in the most chaotic of situations. That might include some screaming and jumping or throwing of things, or sometimes things can get a little chaotic in a family with a child who has autism. And we need a dog who will never react to that. And those are very, very unique and special dogs. So again, I tend to give long answers to short questions, and I apologize for that. But that is the biggest reason that our autism list is so long. We've talked about, can we do a better job of breeding for autism so that we have more dogs that come out of our breeding system that might be the right personality fit for an autism assistance dog? And we can try, but it probably wouldn't be terribly successful, because we have found that when we try to breed for very specific things, we often end up with something else, popping up that we weren't expecting. So that's the answer. The answer is no. We can't just interchange the dogs. And we say that when a dog comes in for final training, usually at around 2 years of age, They are then trained by our professional trainers for several weeks. And it is at that point that they help us decide what they're going to do with the rest of their lives. We call it college, and they're deciding on their major. Some of them will tell us that they don't want to be an assistance dog or can't be an assistance dog. And so they will be career changed. But most of them will tell us what they really love to do and what they're really good at. And that's where they'll end up. And if we have a dog that is extremely alert and attentive and always wants to be working, and has a really sensitive nose, they might be a great autism dog, or a great diabetes dog, for example. They probably wouldn't be a great autism dog, because we need very calm, bomb-proof dogs for that.
Okay, next question. Will teams that went through the PET program get coordinator assistance, and what will that look like? Also, how does it work when the dog passes and the human applies for a service dog? Do we go to the bottom of the list of applicants?
Okay, so the first question about the PET program, I'm going to assume that question is about client provided dogs. So somebody who has their own pet and they want us to train that dog to be an assistance dog for them. If you are accepted into that program, that's just like any other dog, any other puppy we would have. They will be treated exactly the same, just as though we had bred and raised the puppy ourselves. You will get the same service from a dedicated client services coordinator that will work with you to train the dog, and then we'll continue for the life of that team to have our assistance. So that won't be any different. The second question was about someone who has an assistance dog and the assistance dog passes away. You actually move to the top of the list in that case. And that's a value that was created in this organization long before I came, which was if you have had an assistance dog, we feel it's really important that if that dog dies, that you get a replacement if you want one as quickly as possible. Excuse me, it doesn't mean you'll get the very next dog, because that very next dog might not be the right fit. They might not have the right skills, but you will be moved to the top of the list and likely get one relatively quickly.
Okay, we're going to move into a little different direction now. Someone's saying, my wife and I are monthly donors, and I would like to find a way to become more involved physically with the organization. Is there an easy way to do so?
Oh, gosh, yeah. What a great question. First of all, thank you for being monthly donors. We appreciate that. If you go to the web, here's your easy answer. Go to the website, and there are 3 or 4 pull down menus, and I think one is called Get Involved or something really close to that. That will show you the different ways you can donate. So you could be a monthly donor or a one-time donor, or go to one of our events, or put us in your will, or help us raise money. Lots of great ways to do that. But then there's another column that says how to volunteer. And if you want to jump in head first as a volunteer, on top of already being a donor, you can sign up to be a puppy raiser, which means you will take in a puppy for 1.5 years to maybe 2 years and raise and train that puppy to transform someone's life. If you're not ready for that and you want to dip your toe in, there are lots of other options in there of longer term fosters, which might be for a few months, I believe, for shorter term fosters, which might be for a few weeks, and even for puppy sitters, which might be for a week or so. Sandy, my wife and I, we went through a period after I started where our pet passed away before we got our new one. And we had a few months in there where we got to experience what some of our volunteers experience. And we were puppy raisers for a couple of dogs. It was awesome. It was hard work. I am amazed at our whelping families and our puppy raisers who take a dog for 1.5 years or 2 years and then give it back. I just find that almost unfathomable, but we're so thankful for that. But it was really fun and it was really meaningful. And these dogs are just amazing. So I would go to the website and take a look at the different volunteer opportunities and then sign up. And we'll contact you and talk through, ask you some questions. You'll get some training if you're going to go full-fledged in. We'll just have some phone calls and maybe a virtual tour of your home if you're going to do less than that, something smaller. And then you're not obligated. We don't call you up and say, okay, here's a dog, we're bringing him over tomorrow and you've got him for the next 3 weeks. That's not how it works. You get, at least for the shorter term fosters, you'll get emails on occasion saying, here are the opportunities in the coming week or two. Here are the descriptions of the dog and how old they are and what kind of dog they are and how long you would need to take them. Maybe it's for a long weekend because someone who's raising the dog needs a vacation. Maybe it's for 2 weeks. And you can look at all those opportunities and say, this one actually works for me. And first come, first serve, I'll respond and you get that dog. It's really cool. So do that. If you're really interested in doing more than donating, which we're already very thankful for, take a look at that because we are always looking for more volunteers. And I'll throw one more thing in. Help us spread the word. As I mentioned, one of our top priorities is to raise our profile. We want more people to know our story because when people know our story, they donate to us, they volunteer for us, they apply to become clients, they apply for a job here when we have openings, and we want more of that. And you guys are great ambassadors for that. Share the word as best you can. If you have an event that you think we should be at, let us know. And I can't promise you we'll be there because we need to make sure there's someone available, but we want to get out more. So there is an even easier way to get involved, but I'd encourage you to volunteer or at least look at those opportunities.
Somebody else asked then, what is the biggest volunteer need currently?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I know I don't get to use the I'm new here card for much longer, but I don't know today what it is. I am guessing it is for long-term fosters, the ones who take them for 1.5 to 2 years. I know we are always looking for whelping homes. That is an unbelievably difficult, but unbelievably rewarding job. And that is where you have the puppies when they are born and they stay with you for the first few weeks. You don't get a lot of sleep, but the whelping families that we have do it over and over and over again because they love it so much. I couldn't do it. My guess is there's a need there. But I think we are open to just about anybody who's willing to help love these dogs, even if it's only for a week or two.
You mentioned spreading the word, which in marketing, I love that you're saying that, by the way. But somebody made the statement, we should position and notify our medical communities that we are out there.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know if that person saw the work plan or not, but that is in there front and center on this goal number 2. And we have lots of ideas about how we can get the word out without spending money on advertising. But the very top item on there is to make sure that medical providers and, particularly occupational therapists and neurologists and others who our potential clients might be their clients, that they know who we are and what we do and actually appreciate how we could help their clients. Because we're finding that a lot of them either don't know about us specifically, or maybe just don't understand that an assistance dog could actually change some of their clients' lives. And so we are going to be very aggressive in many different ways about getting in front of these people who serve our clients in a different way to let them know about us and to really encourage them to encourage their clients to come and see us.
All right, let's dive into another area of the strategic plan with this question. What percentage of our communities of color or ethnicity receive or participate in services provided by Can Do Canines?
I don't know the exact answer to that question. We decided not too long ago to actually ask that question. We hadn't asked the demographic question about race or religion or anything else of our clients in the past. And we decided to do that. And maybe a year or so ago or 9 months ago, we sent out an anonymous question to our clients. And I think we've done it a second time. The response was okay, but not great because a lot of people are uncomfortable with that question, which is fine. They don't have to answer it. So I don't have a real scientific answer. I can tell you the percentage is low. It's certainly in the single digits, maybe in the mid single digits. We're just not sure. And it's one of the reasons, as you look at our wall of fame with all our clients, it's pretty homogenous. And that's not by design. And it's not because anybody decided that that's what they're going to do. It's just our model has been to network from the people who are already part of us And that usually means you're going to look similar tomorrow as you do today. So that is one of the reasons that part of our raising the profile priority is also casting a much wider net. We have some people who are more active in communities of color who have agreed to help us with this, which we're so thankful for, and are going to start making introductions, and are also going to help us craft our message to make sure that how we sell ourselves to potential clients or potential volunteers or potential staff members is welcome to them. And we're sharing the message in a way that is appealing because we think we are, but we don't know that for sure. So again, we've got some people who are going to be very helpful with that, and we're thankful for it.
All right. Can Do Canines has always been an organization that offers service dogs to people free of charge. Do you remain committed to that ideal in the new strategic plan?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, not a long answer to this question. That I think that's been a value here from day one, and will continue to be as far as I can see. I mean, no one has talked about changing that.
Oh, wow. It's hardly ready for you coming back that quickly to me.
Sorry. Usually I drone on for a lot longer.
Right. Yeah. We get 3 follow-up questions for every answer. Maybe you can go into a little more depth on this when you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but if a client passes away, is the service dog returned to Can Do Canines, or does it remain with that client's family as a pet for sure?
I can't answer this one to a certainty. I can only answer based on what I've seen. I've never had the conversation with anyone. From what I've seen is the dog stays with the client's family. Maybe there would be an exception to that, but I have not seen that. And I think the intent and the desire is that the dog would stay with the family that it has lived with and served over the past however long.
Okay. Here's one. Would you consider offering training to career change dogs and their owners to help them become therapy or other types of dogs? This would be an alternative to a facility dog, but still requires specialized training. Those of us with career changers know that many would do great in those situations.
We haven't, as part of strategic planning or the work plan, we didn't talk about that specific idea. I mean, I think it may have popped up once or twice, and we honestly kind of moved on from it because we were really focused on skilled home companions and possibly facility dogs. But I would say that nothing is off the table right now. As you know, part of the value here is we want to serve more people with disabilities, and we want to be willing to try new things and be innovative and creative. We still have to have the staff capacity to do it, and there'd be a staff capacity issue there. But let me say that I'm open to that idea, and that might be something that, as we have staff looking at facility dogs, maybe we expand that and say, let's also look at this possibility as well, because it's a great way to serve people that we don't do right now.
Are you training dogs for people with PTSD? Are you working with the VA or DAV groups?
So we don't train dogs for someone whose primary disability is PTSD. And there are a lot of great organizations who do. We have our 5 disabilities, and PTSD is not one of them. We have had clients who have a different primary disability, usually probably a mobility issue, who might also have PTSD. And we have been able to work with them not to train a PTSD dog, but to hopefully help them in that area as well. But at least right now, that is not an area where we primarily train for PTSD dogs.
All right, we're going to go back to the breeding topic a little bit. Someone's wondering, can you speak more about your breeding, how the breeding program works? For example, do you maintain data for breeding and selecting? Do you designate breeder pups at birth? And how do you interact with national organizations like yours?
So some of this question, I sometimes can make up answers. I won't dare do that on this one, but I'll do my best. we breed, the majority of our dogs are part of our own breeding program, which, we didn't have 20, 30 years ago. And I think has advanced rather significantly in the last few years. Because of that, we believe that, our career change numbers, hopefully over time, will continue to drop just a little bit every year as we get better at this. I'm not sure about the designation piece, although we are part of, when the question is other large organizations, we're part of an international breeding cooperative through Assistance Dogs International. And so we sometimes will get breeding dogs, moms or dads from other organizations, and sometimes we will loan out some of ours for that purpose. And sometimes the agreement is then if they send us a breeding dad, for example, we will then, after the breeding occurs, they will get one of the puppies or two of the puppies or something like that. And it has been very good for us because it allows us to have a larger number of dogs to serve more people, and also, create some variety in our breeding stock, which from, my understanding of the people who actually understand this better than I do, to be honest with you, has been a huge, huge benefit to us.
And with a natural progression here from breeding to whelping, we've got a question that says, as we continue to grow, where is a whelping center in the plan as a priority?
So that will be probably the main topic of discussion for the working group that we will create and that will launch probably early next year. And that is going to have board members and staff and other stakeholders like volunteers and clients and donors involved in it. And we're going to look at the really big question of what do we look like as an organization? But if part of the answer to that question is we look like something noticeably larger, in other words, we don't want to incrementally increase our number of teams by 5% a year. We want to grow from 50 to 100 or 120 or something else down the road. Then a whelping center will likely have to be part of that. We can't grow in a significant way like that with our current model. It simply won't work. We can't rely solely on whelping homes, whelping volunteers to grow from 50 to 100. They're not going to be available. And it's an extremely, extremely difficult job. And we are so thankful for those people, but that model just won't work. And so what we would have to do, if that is the decision that's made, is we would have to do one of two things: either build a whelping center. I like to call it a puppy center because it could have whelping in it, and then it could have a separate area so we have more training space, maybe more storage space, maybe more office space if we did it on site here. We could do it somewhere else too. A lot of organizations do it that way. And that would allow us then to continue to use our whelping volunteers, but to supplement them. It wouldn't be to replace them. It would be to supplement them so we can grow. There is another option that we've talked about and will be talked about in this working group, and that is rather than building something new, we could buy a home. It would have to be probably outside the metro a little bit for zoning purposes, but we could buy a home and turn it into a whelping home, and supplement, maybe not in quite as large a way, but we could supplement what we're doing right now with our whelping volunteers and grow in a way that we otherwise wouldn't be able to do. So for me, that's one of the most exciting things, that it may be the most exciting thing, big picture, that we can talk about for the future. But it will require some significant changes to how we do what we do. And those are some big policy issues that will have to involve a lot of people, and in particular, our board of directors.
All right. Someone says this: I see on Facebook you are collecting dog toys. What can groups do or provide long-term, such as buying items?
Karen, do you have a good answer to that question?
I do. Actually.
Good, go for it.
Yeah, right now we are collecting for our prison program. We have some toys coming in because every year we replenish items for those inmates to use as they're raising and training the dogs. We also are going to be looking for replenishing toys and supplies that we give to our clients. Every client as they graduate receives a starter kit from us. So watch for your opportunity to give toward that cause. And then our whelping homes also need lots of supplies. As Jeff said, that's a big job. They need so many things, from blankets to lights and light bulbs, and I just can't even go into all the details. So we're trying to spread that out and not overwhelm you too much at any one time with those requests, but know that there will be plenty of ways to get involved for that. So we appreciate everything that you can do in that way. So
Thank you.
all right,
Can
so
I
we'll
ask
jump.
more questions.
Yeah, we have more questions. I'll jump to the next one. What future events are you planning? Are you planning to stay with past major events, the fetching ball, spring lunch, the walk, or will they be differing now with COVID?
Some of them may look different. We don't really know yet. Our next real big event will be the gala at the end of February, and that's 4 months away. We're just talking about this today. It's kind of impossible to make. Our intent is to be in person. I can tell you that much, but it's impossible to make decisions about what it really looks like in the end at this point. That's probably at least a couple months away before we kind of know where the world and the country is and what the law says and everything else. For next year, the intent with respect to our major events, which major fundraising events at least, which are the gala, then there was 2 Tales of Independence, a breakfast and a lunch, and then our Woofaroo. The intent next year is to still do the gala at the end of February, back in person again. Probably to just do 1 Tales of Independence event for, I can't remember if it was breakfast or lunch, and then really look at changing that up in the future to make sure we're doing it the way that's the best and most effective. And we'll still have the Woofaroo, because that's not only a wonderful fundraising event, it's just a wonderful event for our entire huge family and army of people just to get together. But one piece of our work plan is to really dive deep into every one of our major events, whether they're fundraising events or otherwise, and kind of take them apart and decide whether, just because this is how we've done it and it's worked well, whether that's really the best way to do it or even the best event to have. So there may be changes down the road. I don't think you'll see dramatic changes next year or anything canceled next year. But over time, you probably will see some changes. Graduation is a great example of that. We haven't had an in-person graduation for a year and a half until this last Saturday. And we had our first in-person graduation. It was very different from what we've done before because of COVID and because of our clients wanting to feel comfortable and safe. They have underlying conditions, obviously. We made it an invitation-only event, and it was relatively small. And for those of you who've been to graduations before, you know it's generally wall-to-wall. You can hardly move. There's a buzz and there's excitement and there's some level of chaos and a lot of stress. And this didn't look like that. This was much smaller, and it had some huge benefits, at least from the volunteers and clients that I talked to there, because they got to get together. And because we kept it small, we didn't invite every volunteer that helped raise a particular dog. We invited the volunteer or volunteer family that had spent the most time with that dog. So unfortunately, it meant that not everyone could come. But that family then got to spend time directly with the client and the client's family and the dog together for a half hour, 45 minutes in their own little pod, and be together rather than be separated at some point and then parade up on the stage. And I heard nothing but really positive comments from both clients and volunteers about that. The value of that time together was huge for them. And so as we look at being able to open things up again in the future, our graduations will probably look a bit different than they did before. We may not still have quite the level of ceremony of handing the dog off up on the stage, because my understanding is it created a great deal of stress for the dogs and for some of the clients, and certainly for staff, because it's a huge amount of work to set that up and take it down. But what we'd like to do is maybe keep things somewhat similar to the way we did it, but expand it so that we can have more people here and include more volunteers, allow clients to invite more family, allow more donors who've been involved to come in and be part of it. And I'm probably now in huge trouble for sharing any of that information, but that's at least what we've talked about. And I think people are pretty excited about it.
All right, we had somebody else write in saying, please post ongoing wish lists on your website of items needed. And if you don't mind, Jeff, I'll field that because I can tell that person that we do already, but we are working to make it better right now. But under the Get Involved tab, under there's a Make a Gift section, kind of the development part of the site. There's a section for more ways to give. And if you click into that, and there's a list that also includes donate items or services, and it has a wish list on there. However, as I mentioned, kind of 3 different wish lists that we're working on separately right now. We'll be posting those as we solidify them with Amazon wish lists, and we'll be communicating more about that to you soon.
Thank you.
So let me jump back. We just have a few minutes left. One thing that people have said, I think this might be a great way to start wrapping things up, is I really like that you're doing this Zoom meeting. It's a great way to connect with CANDO's various stakeholders. Do you think you will have an annual state of the organization type of Zoom meeting like this in the futures? And we would love to see this annually communicate with volunteers, clients, and potential clients.
Yep. The answer is yes. Karen and I have actually talked about that, about doing this once or possibly even twice a year, just to answer questions, to give a little update on where we're at. And I mean, Zoom does make it a lot easier than, I know some people would much prefer an in-person event, and maybe we'll get there at some point too, but this does make it easier, certainly easier on staff, but easier for most people to actually attend as well. So that is the plan. Yeah.
Okay, well, we have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to keep plugging away here for a little bit. How about the prisons? Are we getting back in all the prisons yet? We haven't talked about that, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah, we are back in 5 of our 7 prisons, and we're not back full-fledged in all 5 of them yet. We got kicked out of all of our prisons for COVID, as I think everybody can understand that situation. We're back in 5 of them. The other 2 we will be back in at some point, but it's probably a bit down the road. We also are talking to a couple of other prisons that we would love to be part of. I mean, the prison program is such a hidden gem of this organization, because it's a huge benefit to us, because these inmates help us raise and train dogs to give to people with disabilities. It's also a huge benefit to them, or at least every inmate I've talked to, and I've talked to quite a few of them over the last 11 months in person. Many of them say it is the single most important thing going on in their life. In fact, some of them have told me it's the only important thing going on in their life, and that it is for those who are going to get out. Some of them won't, but those who are going to get out, that they feel it's changed their lives and given them a different outlook on what their future can be. So we would love it if we could add a prison or 2. That won't happen soon because COVID has just really slowed things down, but maybe next year there's a possibility of that. But yes, we're back in 5 out of 7. Hopefully next year we'll be back in 7 out of 7, and maybe even adding to that.
All right, and for our last minute and a half, maybe one last question, Jeff. Now that you've been around a little while, what is it that you love most about Can Do Canines? End on that.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to end. The prison program would be high. Okay, so I could have like 6 answers to this question, because the staff is amazing, volunteers are amazing, our dogs are amazing, everything. I'm going to go with something broader than that. I've been involved in a lot of nonprofits over the years, as I'm sure most of you have as well, and they do amazing things. But this place is so different from any place I've been involved with before. And that's what I think I love most about it, is that we create something that is unique from almost any other nonprofit that exists out there. As I mentioned before, if we provided people who need a motorized wheelchair with a motorized wheelchair, or a hearing aid, or somebody to go to their house and help them clean because they can't do it themselves, that is a wonderful service. But we do something so different and bigger than that. We literally are able to transform people's lives, and in some cases in the lives of an entire family, by creating this long-term relationship between just an amazing dog and an amazing person. And that dog becomes the love of their life and supports them and loves them 24/7, 365 days a year, even on the bad days. And some of our clients have really bad days. And they become, in many cases, the most important thing to each other in their lives. And it changes everything. And while the other nonprofits I've been part of do amazing work, this one is different. And that uniqueness and the specialness of what we're able to do is what I love the best about this organization. And it's why I'm so thankful that I'm allowed to be part of it. So thank you for all you do that allow us to do that, because the work this organization does is just absolutely amazing. So maybe that's a great way to end, Karen.
I agree. So that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for being with us this evening, and we look forward to doing this again very soon.